Hi, this is Riaz from Networks Learning. Welcome to Cisco Next Generation Firewall training videos. In this video, we will take a look at how we can configure file policy in FTD. Previously, we have configured multiple policies, including access control policy, DNS policy, pre-filter policy. We also configured the security intelligence features, including IP-based, network-based, and we also configured some DNS-based security intelligence and tested the results as well. So over here we will take a look at how we can configure uh, file policy on our FTD in this network. So basically this is the topology, and we have an inside network and outside zone. We have a client machine for test purpose with Windows 7 operating system. So file policy, you can see over here I have an access control policy, and access control policy, inside access control policy we call the file policy. So inside access control policy I have a rule with the name IT subnet inet access, and over here we can integrate the file policy under inspection tab. Over here you can configure file policy and integrate with the access control policy rule for the traffic monitoring and for file control purpose. So moving on to the file control policy, malware in file. Under policy section you have malware in file. So file policy allows you to detect and inspect transmitted files. Your network is connected to the internet, and the users are able to connect to internet, and they are browsing over the internet, and your email servers are connected, and your intranet services are running, your applications are running on remote side, on head office side, and each and everything is passed via the firewall. So at firewall you have the capability to detect and to allow to block certain types of files based on their extensions. So the supported protocols that FTD supports for file detection are FTP, HTTP, SMTP, IMAP, POP3, NetBIOS. These are some kind of protocols that are supported for file transfer and file detection and file blockage. There are two features of the file detection over here. It consists of file control, and it consists of AMP, advanced malware protection for networks. So file control provides the capability to block files based on certain type of extensions, while AMP, advanced malware protection, detects the malware inside the files. It detects the malware. So for malware, for AMP you need a malware license. In order to control the file, the function of file configuration, or the functionality of the file control, is independent of the malware. It's not that if you want to configure a file control policy you have to enable malware policy on that. It's not like that. The file control is independent and malware is independent. Advanced malware protection is independent. File control is independent from malware inspection. File can be blocked, allowed, no matter if they are infected or not. What does it mean? It means that a file, you can apply a policy based on file extension, and you can either block a file and allow a file, either it's a malware or not. This leads you to have a data loss prevention policy inside your network. Suppose your organization have a policy that you don't want to allow any internal information, internal database information, users identity information to be going to the outside. So you can block that kind of files, suppose Excel files, PDF files, that you don't want to go to the outside of the your network. So the functionality, the working functionality of AMP and IPS is quite similar. However, if advanced malware protection and IPS is also configured for the traffic, the control happens first. You know, if you have configured other policies on policies along with the file control, then the file control policy will be executed first, then other policies will be applied over that policy. Advanced malware protection, we have multiple actions against advanced malware protection. We can create a test file policy, and when we create a test file policy, we can create multiple rules inside this policy. So here you can see that we have file type, application protocol, direction, and action. We can specify the action. Basically, the main function of the AMP is to detect the files based on the hash. So when a file comes to the FTD and under AMP policy, it has to create it has to calculate a hash function, a hash value of the file. So it will check in its database that if the hash value is a malware or not. So based on that result, it will declare that it should be either blocked or it should be allowed on the network. So this is the way how the AMP works in the FTD. The results can be different based on the result of the hash function. It can be dynamic verdict from AMP cloud. Means when a file comes to the FTD will calculate its hash function, and if it has the hash function of that file in its local database with a clarity of either the file, either the hash calculated is a malware or not. If it does not have information in its local database, it will query to the FMC server. FMC server will check in its own database against the hash value provided by the FTD and will provide the result to the FTD. And if FMC doesn't have the information about a hash function in its local database, it can query to the Cisco cloud, Cisco cloud for the hash value and the ultimate action against the hash value of that file. So basically, what does it mean? It means that the hash value can be sent to the Cisco cloud, which is called the AMP threat grid. And AMP threat grid is a Cisco sandboxing solution where files are run in the virtual environment, and their behavior is analyzed, and based on that behavior the result is taken from that file and is sent back to the FTD box. So here you can create multiple rules based on your conditions. Application protocol, you can select here the supported protocols are HTTP or any, and direction of the transfer, upload, download, or any means all directions. Or you can, in action tab, you can detect files, you can block files, you can malware cloud lookup. Detect means it will only logs the files, it will only log. and you can only see the traffic, and it will store it in its local database about the information about the files and their logs. And you can block enables the file control block based on configured rule. When you configure any rule and you specify the types of files or that you want to block, that file will be blocked. Then we have malware cloud lookup. You know, malware cloud lookup means malware cloud lookup query the cloud but allow file regardless of the disposition. It will take the file, it will allow the file, but it will send the file to the AMP cloud database for the result of that file. Then we have the block malware. Block malware is just like block files. It enables the malware engine to block the file based on its deposition. So these are the some of the actions that you can actually configure, and you can block files based on the categories: office documents, archive, multimedia, executable files, PDF files, graphics, system files. These are some kind of categories, and based on these categories you can perform multiple action against these files. Detect files, it will only detect and log the files in the logs in the system. Block file means just straight away block. Malware cloud lookup means the file will first be checked against the malware in the cloud environment threat grid. Then the result will send back to the FTD, and based on that result, the action will be taken against that hash value. Block malware means if the malware, if it's really a malware, it will be blocked. So this is a kind of a static, and you can configure a dynamic entry as well. Here we have an advanced tab. In advanced tab we have a general setting. First time file analysis is checked. Means if a file comes to the FTD engine, it will first take an analysis on the file whether it is a legitimate file or it is a malware. Enable custom detection list. You can provide your own lists with an action that it is a clean file or it is a malware file. Enable clean list. It is also provided over here. If AMP cloud deposition is unknown, override. Medium high archive file inspection. You can archive the inspection of the files as well. So here we will configure a basic test file policy. Inside test file policy we will configure a rule to block the PDF documents download. I will be blocking the PDF documentation over here. So the category type is office document and file type is PDF. You can add to the rule. Detect files, block files. I will say that block files. Reset connection with. Either you can reset the connection, or you don't have the reset, and you can configure reset option, and if you want, the user will be prompted with a reset, and you can store the file locally on the FTD. So for the record purpose, click on save, then you can go to deployment. Here all devices are set up to date because we haven't integrated the malware policy with access control policy rule. You have to specify inside the access control policy rule, uh, then it will be fully able to integrate with the deployment. So we have this rule. I will allow this rule to be integrated with the file control policy. There are multiple tabs, and in inspection area you can specify the file policy. Test file policy I have created, and I have blocked the PDF files on the network. So now save over here, then go to deployment, apply the changes, and come back to check the results. Here you can say RGS compressor test file policy. Once the deployment is completed, I will be back, because if the deployment takes quite a long time. The deployment is completed for the file and AMP policy. Here I want to show you another more details about the malware settings of the file policy. So on this test file policy, we have configured that PDF files should be blocked from any application, any protocol in any direction with a block file with a reset action. So you can also configure it with malware cloud lookup. With malware cloud lookup, you have multiple other engines that you can use for the file lookup. That is, you can see over here, local malware analysis can also be done and can be used for the malware analysis of the files against the hash functionality. So you can store the files, malwares, unknowns, clean, and custom on the local FMC server. So you can currently I have configured with the block file action, but you can also configure with malware cloud lookup or block malware if it's really a malware file. So going back to the client machine, so I will download a PDF file and we'll check a look at how does the FTD behaves against our configured rule. PDF. Simple PDF file. So let's see what happens. FTD should block with the connection reset. It's still working on, and we can also see in analysis and file events. You can see over here. Yes, you can see an entry within action of block, and the hit count is 3 over here. We can go into more detail about this PDF file. So you can see over here, it's 1609. The action is block. Then receiving IP is 10.12.100. Sending port is 80. Receiving port is random. File name is sample PDF, and you can see over here the connection was reset, so we are unable to download the file as it is blocked at FTD. PDF file category is PDF files, and the URI is provided over here. Client is Firefox, web application is Google, and file policy is test file policy with the device on our firewall. Ingress virtual router is global, and that's the global setting. So this is how you can block the file, and you can also configure these with the malware settings, which we haven't configured yet. So in this policy, you can configure block a malware if it's a malware. So this is how you can configure file and malware policy on Cisco FTD file.